The knights kneel in full armor, but they've never looked more afraid. Not of swords, of words. Their gauntlets rest on a golden box of bone and dust, a saint's relic. Break this oath, the bishop warns, and you won't just lose a war. You'll lose your soul. Tonight, around the year 1000, they swear to end 1,000 years of blood. No more burning villages. No more butchered clergy. No more Christian war, ever, if you believe the words. The council records call it a lasting, perpetual peace. Some texts even reach for the language of eternity, a truce to bind generations not yet born. And yet, within decades, this eternal peace is riddled with loopholes, exemptions, and holy exceptions. It never explodes in public. It rots in silence. This is the story of how a 1,000-year peace died, and how its ghost kept Europe at war. To understand why anyone thought they needed eternal peace, we have to walk into a collapsing world. The old Carolingian Empire is splintering. By the late 800s and 900s, power in West Francia, roughly modern France, belongs to warlords. Counts, dukes, petty princes, each with their own private army, their own private grudges. Chronicles from Reims describe the pattern: raids on castles, but also something worse: monasteries stripped, churches torched, peasants hacked down in fields. Christendom cannibalizing itself. And this is happening while Vikings raid coasts, Muslims hold Spain, and Magyars threaten from the east. To churchmen, it feels like the last days, and their own knights are doing the devil's work. So, around 975, bishops in the south, Aquitaine, Languedoc, Catalonia, start to improvise. If kings can't stop the chaos, maybe the saints can. They call councils. Lords are summoned. Relics are carried in solemn processions. Ordinary peasants are allowed, encouraged, to show up and scream their fear at the men who rule them. One chronicler at Limoges around 994 describes crowds weeping as relics pass. Famine stalks the land. People genuinely believe, if this peace fails, God will let them starve. This is the peace of God, the truce of God, a radical idea. Maybe you can scare warriors into peace by making war a mortal sin. It's not our modern, secular peace. It's enforced by terror of the sacred, by the fear that God is watching your blade. Then, in June 989, at a place called Charroux in Aquitaine, the experiment goes big. Bishops gather to make peace not just desirable, but permanent. The Council of Charroux issues canons, church laws, that read like a declaration of war on war. Harm a church, a cleric, a peasant, and you're automatically excommunicated. The language is breathtakingly bold. They talk of a stable peace, a perpetual peace, pax perpetua, pax aeterna, not a temporary truce, a new order. Knights place mailed hands on relics and gospel books. They swear they will not raid churches or rob merchants or cut down unarmed peasants. Break this, and you're cut off from communion until you make it right. In 1027, at Toulouse, they go further. The truce of God bans fighting from Saturday evening to Monday morning, and later from Wednesday night too. Whole days are declared off limits to war, in perpetuum, forever. In some regions, you're only supposed to fight 3 or 4 days a week. Medieval war becomes the scheduling problem. Eternal peace by rationing violence. The enforcement is brutal, at least in theory. Oaths on relics. Collective responsibility. Other Christians are told to hunt down violators. Denial of burial in holy ground. In an age obsessed with the Last Judgment, being buried outside the cemetery is terrifying. It's not just social shame. It's eternal jeopardy. In some places, powerful lords become sureties, hostages in all but name for their vassals. If a subordinate breaks the peace, the superior pays in coin, honor, or blood. This is the church's nuclear option, excommunication. Not just a religious penalty. In theory, it strips you of allies. Anyone who helps you shares your curse. Did it work? In some pockets of Aquitaine and Catalonia, violence against peasants and churches seems to dip. Elsewhere, the blood keeps flowing. The eternal peace is already uneven. And there are problems baked into the fine print. The peace mostly protects non-combatants, clergy, peasants, merchants, knights. Less so. You can still feud, as long as you aim at each other and mind the calendar. If you're clever, you learn to concentrate your raids into legal days and aim your rage at unprotected targets. You're not breaking the peace. Not technically. And then there's the biggest loophole of all. The peace covers Christians. It says almost nothing about Muslims in Spain, pagans on the Baltic, or distant empires in the East. So a knight can keep his oath at home, burn no Christian village, and still ride merrily south to raid Muslim lands. In his mind, the peace is intact. By November 1095, at Clermont, the system flips. Pope Urban II, steeped in the peace and truce tradition, stands up and makes a breathtaking offer. For decades, warriors have been told, "Don't shed Christian blood." Now Urban promises remission of sins if they take that violence east as armed pilgrims against Muslims. It's the great twist. A peace movement becomes a recruitment machine. The same emotional tools, oaths, relics, salvation anxiety, are redeployed to launch the first crusade. Urban doesn't say the peace of God is over. He reinterprets it. Don't kill Christians, but killing in the name of Christ? That might save you. From here on, the distinction isn't between violence and peace. It's between illicit violence and holy or legitimate violence. The ghost of the 1,000-year peace will haunt that line. Meanwhile, something else is undermining the old oaths. Around 1150, kings in France and England get strong enough to want their own monopoly on violence. Louis VII, Philip Augustus, Henry II, they start banning private war not because God forbids it, but because the crown does. Feuds are dragged into royal courts, tied to taxes and jurisdiction. Peace councils continue, especially in the South, but they matter less. The eternal peace becomes one tool among many, overshadowed by royal ordinances and legal reforms. And in a grim irony, the birthplace of the peace of God, southern France, becomes ground zero for Christian-on-Christian apocalypse, the Albigensian Crusade, starting 1209. At Béziers, when asked how to distinguish heretic from faithful, a papal legate reportedly shrugs, "Kill them all. God will know his own." The ideal of protecting Christian non-combatants is ash. There is no single night when someone tears up the 1,000-year peace. Instead, it dies by non-use, by being bypassed, then inverted. By the late 13th century, major treaties rarely mention the truce of God. The language of perpetual peace doesn't disappear, though. It migrates. In the Holy Roman Empire, emperors like Charles IV issue Landfrieden, public peace edicts. Again, they promise an eternal land peace, outlawing private feuds. Again, enforcement is patchy. Fast forward. Westphalia, 1648. Utrecht, 1713. Paris, 1815. Again and again, diplomats write the same phrase, perpetual peace and amity between their realms. And again, the ink dries, the wax sets, and new wars erupt. The title changes, the ghost remains. In 1795, the philosopher Immanuel Kant writes, "Perpetual peace." He jokes about taverns near cemeteries named to perpetual peace, a dark nod to centuries of failed promises. After nearly a millennium, Europeans know one thing. The only truly perpetual peace is the peace of the grave. So what was lost when the 1,000-year peace dissolved into loopholes? For one, a rare moment when peasants, not princes, stood at the center of a political experiment. For a few decades, ordinary villagers could point to a saint's bone, to a bishop's cannon, and say to a knight, "You can't do that. God says no." In the long run, though, the lesson rulers took wasn't abolish war. It was control it. Claim a monopoly on legitimate violence. Wrap swords in the language of peace. The peace and truce of God helped birth ideas we still use: non-combatant immunity, just war, limitations on when and how you can kill. But they also helped sacralize certain kinds of killing. Whenever a modern treaty promises perpetual peace, or a war is justified as necessary, limited, humanitarian, it's echoing patterns set when knights first swore on relics not to burn a church. Could the 1,000-year peace ever really have worked? In a fractured, honor-obsessed world, probably not forever. But for the people of the year 1000, forever didn't mean mathematically endless. It meant long enough to matter. The real tragedy is not that the peace broke. All treaties do. It's that, when it cracked, we learned to live comfortably with its ghost. A world where war is never gone, only renamed.